Hey, Scribe. Happy Wednesday. It's April, y'all. Are you ready? It's a little bit crazy to me that we are in Q2. And so I felt like it was the perfect time for us to talk about our writing goals for Q2. So before we jump into that, we're going to specifically talk about what kind of writer you need to be in Q2. And this is made up out of my head, and it's really coming from connections and conversations that I've had with people, and also things that are going on in my life. But before we get into it today, hey, Melissa, before we get into it today, welcome, Melissa. I am Taiia Smart Young. I'm the face behind this page. I am passionate about helping newbie and aspiring writers create influence, impact, and income. Hey, Jean. And let me tell you something. If you are not focused on your focus, then guess what happens? You don't produce anything. So you're not creating income because you're not getting published. You're not creating impact because no one's reading your work, and you're not creating influence because it's not out there for other people to enjoy or to learn from. It's nice to see my face. Well, I was going to say it's nice to see your face too, Jean, but I can only see a picture of you. So it's nice to see a picture. So as always, drop your questions and comments in the comment section if you're watching live or on the replay. If you're watching on the replay later today, drop those questions in there because I do hop in to answer questions. So, and share the video because, you know, we are growing this community. We have like over 300 and something people. I think we're close to like 330 now who are liking this page and rocking with us. So share this page so that your writer friend who is working on that essay that they told you about in December of 2018, that they can get it together and get focused for Q2. So first of all, you know, we started this year with the bucket list, the nectar list, the goals list, everything. We had all the things that we planned to do and planned to accomplish, whether it was personal or professional or writing. And not everything got accomplished, myself included. Remember, I told you that I had to remove some things from my goals list. I did this whole video about not making resolutions, but really focusing on my goals for the new year and choosing my word, which is abundance, for 2019. So I had to take some of those things off because I was doing the most with the least. And I had to really realize where my time needed to be spent. My time was just, it seemed like it was all over the place. And that wasn't helping me achieve my goals. And honestly, I'm way more successful when I have my goals in specific like buckets. So I think of each quarter as like a bucket, and I drop the goals in there. And that way I'm kind of able to work backwards so that I meet the goal. You know what I mean? So like if you want to do something by the fourth quarter, then you have all of this time leading up to the fourth quarter to plan for it. So perfect example. I plan to have a writing set. So in 2018, I was telling a bunch of friends that this is what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to have this writing set, but I was kind of, you know what happens when you realize that you want to do an event is that everything starts to overwhelm you because you're like, wait a minute, I need a space. I need snacks. I need drinks. I got to send out invites. I got to promote this thing. And it starts to really intimidate you. Or it starts to intimidate me. Let me not project. And so when you're doing that, it's like, or at least when I'm doing that, I'm like, okay, I really got to do this thing. And so as the time started to creep near, I had to say, you know what? I have to talk to people who can help me. They can either help me brainstorm and figure this thing out, help me find a space that's cheap, affordable. I can do a barter, something, and help me and hold me accountable so that I'm not backing out of my goal. So that's the first kind of writer that I want to talk about. Are you going to be the writer who does the thing that they say they are going to do? Are you doing what you say you are going to do? So I finally feel like I'm taking the idea from 2018. It's happening April 20th in New York City. I'm doing my writing set. So I know you're probably like, T, what's a writing set? I know. Okay, so the whole thing is that these paint and sips are super popular. Hey, Akila. These paint and sips, welcome. These paint and sips are super popular. So I said, you know what? I've been to these paint and sips and I come away with something that I've painted and it never looks good, right? I'm struggling. So I'm like, you know what about for all the people who want to write and connect and be part of a community? So I said, let me just do something a little sexy with some drinks and some light snacks. And I'm going to host it, have a few writing prompts, nothing too scary, nothing too major where it's like, oh, we have all these established and published writers. It's going to be a mix of published people and newbie people. And guess what? Just because you might not be published, that doesn't make you any less of a writer. If you put pen to paper, you're a writer. If you put fingers to keyboard, then you're a writer. So on my New York Scribes 420, look for that invite next week. Because you guys are definitely invited. Okay. So I want you to be the writer who is positioning yourself to execute on the idea that you said you were going to do. No more of this, like, it'll happen next year, it'll happen next month or whatever. Don't do that. Let's see. What else? Oh, I want you to be the writer that is disciplined. So most of the time when we have blocks with whatever we're doing, whether it's professional, personal, there's something that's holding us back. And a lot of times, even with me, it can be your inner critic. The critic is telling you, you don't have enough experience. You haven't spent enough time researching the idea. And sometimes you just need to put yourself in a situation where you're doing what you said you're going to do. So I like to start small sometimes. When you have this big thing, you know, I always talk about the elephant. Like, how do you eat an elephant? You don't eat it in one big swoop. You got to cut that something down. You got to eat the elephant chunk by chunk, right? So that's what you have to do with your goals. That's what I did with the writing sip. I said, okay, first things first, place. So I had to start talking to people and telling them that this was going to happen so that I can get ideas. Boom, got the place. But if I wasn't disciplined and force myself to now have the conversation and talk to people, then I might not have had the place. Like, just literally, I felt like it fell in my lap. I started talking to two people, and then 2 seconds later, I had the place. So for you, in terms of your writing, whether it's your script, your essay, your blog, your memoir, hell, if you're writing your registry for your bridal shower, right? You can start small. You can just do things and break them down. So my suggestion is, if you're writing something that's super long, start with 500 words a day. You've heard me say this before. 500 words a day is nothing when you sit down and you get in your zone and you really force yourself. And I don't say that you have to do it every day, but if you want to start somewhere small, give yourself 3 days and say, I'm going to write 500 words a day. Maybe you do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Maybe you do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You have to figure out what's best for you. But the thing is, consistency is key. Consistency will help you get to the point where it's like, oh, okay, the elephant is not as huge. You've broken it down into these manageable chunks and you can execute in the way you need to do. Now, here's the thing. You know, I always like to give you here's the thing. You're going to sit down and say to yourself, oh my God, I will never be as good as Angela Thomas, who wrote The Hate U Give. I will never be as good as Shonda Rhimes, right? I will never be as good as Esmeralda Santiago or Gloria Calderon Galet, who is she's a famous Latina showrunner. She one of her shows, the One Day at a Time, was just canceled on Netflix, and I'm heartbroken because it was one of my favorite shows. So now you will never be these people, right? You're saying to yourself that I will never be like her. I'll never be Jordan Peele. You won't. Because Jordan Peele is Jordan Peele. Angie Thomas is Angie Thomas. You are you. And until you own your genius and you package it and you put it together and you put it out into the world, you will never be the person or the writer or the published author or the script writer that you want to be, the showrunner that you want to be, because you haven't put forth the discipline to be you and not worrying about someone else's lane, because you can't be Shonda Rhimes. She's already got that job. She's doing it. You trying to be the next Shonda Rhimes doesn't make sense. You have to open up the lane for yourself. Hey, Mona, welcome. So Oh, and I also talk, I talk a lot about writing to your skill level. So don't be trying to come up in here talking about you want to write this, 500 page memoir. You don't have to do all that. Maybe you can't write a memoir just yet. Maybe you just got to focus on an essay about one experience in your life. No shame in it, but do it, get it done. And I'm here for you. So listen, you know what happens when consistency shows up in your life? You're able to cross things off of your bucket list, whatever you call it, your goals list, your to-do list, your bucket list, your one of my friends calls it the nectar list. You're able to cross it off. And I like to think of it this way. Do you guys know that Mucinex commercial where there's a blob of mucus that shows up in the jungle with a gorilla? And the mucus goes to the gorilla. Hey, buddy, I'm looking for this lady with a cough, a nice lady with a cough. And the gorilla goes and smacks fire out of the mucinex, of the little blob of mucus, and sends it flying somewhere in the jungle. And that's what happens to your inner critic, to your fear, once you show up and you provide that consistency to get whatever it is that you're doing done, whether it's the blog post, the memoir, the script, the poem, whatever it is, you want to have that consistency. Okay. Are you going to be the writer that makes impact with what you are saying, with what you're doing? There is a poet that I follow on Instagram, and I'm not a big poetry person, but I love to follow certain people because their voice just resonates. Their voice has like this connection for me, and I feel like I really get into their message, right? So I feel like there are certain poets, there are certain writers who you are really, you become part of their movement because you're feeling their influence, you're feeling their impact on you. So last week I went to this book signing. So my friends, they're just like dope writers, dope editors. And so I went to this book signing for this book called I want to get it right, How We Fight White Supremacy by Akiba Solomon and Kenria Rankin. So let me just show y'all the book. Because, first of all, we can't just show up to the book signing and not purchase the book. That we don't do that. We want to make sure people, didn't I say income impact? Okay. So this is the book, How We Fight White Supremacy. And it is, so I thought this book was going to be like, so it's thick. You can see it's nice and thick. I thought it was going to be like super academic, like really heady. And it is so good in terms of letting you know that what resistance looks like. It doesn't always look like people being in the streets with picket signs and marching and saying fight the power or whatever. Resistance can be love. Resistance can be investing in your community. Resistance can be you teaching kids karate on the weekends. Resistance can be shade, coming after, a politician that you disagree with on Twitter. Resistance has its many different forms. And what I love about this book is that it takes a mix of voices. So there are famous voices like Harry Belafonte, and he's talking about his activism and his influence on people and the younger generation and the Black Lives Matter movement and their influence. And then there are people like my neighbor, who is a dope multimedia artist. She's in the book. She has she wrote something about one of her photos. And then my one of my good friends, who I host a step show with like every year for like the last 7 years, he's in it. And he's talking about when he was incarcerated and the 10 years that he spent incarcerated and what it was like trying to reprogram himself when he came out. So it's like all of these different stories that have impacted me in some way, just because it's like a new perspective. Like I never thought of, oh, okay, this is a way to fight the system, to love up on your neighbor, to to save for the future. Like you want to be here, well, guess what? You're going to have to save some coin. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go and write a book about resisting, but what I'm saying to you is that these editors, they actually work together on a publication called Color Lines. And what they did was they used their expertise in terms of wanting to empower communities of color into this book and channeling it and making it an extension of their expertise. So what expertise do you have? How can you channel that and now create influence and impact with what you're doing? So if maybe you're the only teacher of color at a private school, or maybe you are a teacher who is founding a school and you want to talk about how you plan to create a new system, a new curriculum to empower students. This is a way for you to show your influence and your impact, right? Let's see, maybe you are a writer who is working on a guide, a workbook, an ebook. Remember, I always talk about writing, starting with a small book first, especially for people who are new to writing, so that you don't get so intimidated and overwhelmed by all there is that you have to do when you're actually forced to sit down and write this ebook or write this guide, right? So let's see what I want to say. So don't forget that you can use your expertise in whatever it is. Maybe I feel like I see people all the time using something as simple as them starting a business from home, right? Like there was this, at one point, there was this whole stay-at-home mom movement, and now it's like mompreneurs. Now you have all these women who realize, you know what, while I'm home, I actually can launch this business because I can do it when my kid's taking a nap. I can do it from the playground and I'm on my phone and I'm figuring out products maybe for my website, or I'm figuring out a course that I want to build. So to quickly recap, what kind of writer do you want to be in Q2? So if you want to be the kind of writer who does what you say you are going to do, then you're going to make the plan, right? Write it down, make it plain, and work toward that. And maybe be like me and put it in those buckets based on the quarter so that you can work toward your goal. The other kind of writer I want you to be in Q2 is to be disciplined. Don't be overwhelmed by all there is to do, because you may have this, like you may say to yourself, I want to write this 1,000-word essay that I want to get published in X publication. Okay. First things first, just sit down and maybe just outline your idea. Scribble some notes. Make some non-negotiables that have to go into your story. And that is the way that you start to become a disciplined writer. You take this macro thing and you break it down into these bite-sized chunks. And then the last kind of writer that I want you to be is a writer who uses the expertise to create influence, because your story is so valuable. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do the write-in set. Why I am doing the write-in set come April 20th, because I want people to share their stories. I feel like we learn so much from the person's story who's sitting next to us. And it's like, you always tend to think, I'm the only one who's dealing with this. I'm the only one who, retired, or I'm the only one who is trying to pivot into a new career, and you're not. So I want us to be able to share these stories and really connect at the write-in sip. So that's why there's going to be a lot of sipping at the write-in sip, because sometimes we need that liquid courage. So let me see, are there any questions or comments about today? Let's see. I don't see any questions or comments. So you guys, I'm going to wrap up and get out of here, and I will see you next week. But I will be looking forward to seeing you at the write-in sip if you are based in New York City. And if not, that's okay, because you got me and I got you, and we're here every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. You guys take care. Have a great week.